All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the National World War II Museum. My name is Chrissy Gregg, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Education here. And it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to our International Holocaust Remembrance Day ceremony. Tonight's program is generously sponsored by Toby Philanthropies and is part of the Toby Family Holocaust Education Program. At the start of every program, we like to take a moment to recognize any World War II veterans, Holocaust survivors, and homefront workers in our audience. Tonight, we are actually fortunate to be with two very special people here. First off is our Holocaust survivor that you'll hear from tonight, Manny Gabler, over here. You will hear, yes. You will hear more of Mr. Gabler's story in a moment. We are also very lucky to be joined tonight by World War II veteran, Mr. John Roman Jr., Seaman First Class. He's over here. Mr. Roman served in the 3rd and 5th Fleet, United States Navy. He served in the Pacific Theater, including Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Luzon, and the fall of Japan. I would like to ask Mr. Gabler and Mr. Roman, along with any other World War II veterans, Holocaust survivors, homefront workers, to stand or, if able, or wave to be recognized. Thank you for being here. Tonight, we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day. 81 years ago today, the largest of the death camps, Auschwitz-Birkenau, was liberated by the Red Army. At Auschwitz alone, 1.1 million Jews were murdered. Tonight, we remember those individuals who were murdered at Auschwitz and the 5 million other Jews killed by the Nazis across Europe during World War II. In 2005, the United Nations declared this day, January 27th, as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Ceremonies take place at the UN headquarters in New York and at UN offices across the globe. The National World War II Museum is one of many museums and organizations that recognize and commemorate this day. As mentioned earlier, this evening we are incredibly grateful to hear from Holocaust survivor Manny Gabler. Manny is joining us today in New Orleans from the Twin Cities, so it's slightly warmer here, but not too much, right? His parents fled Nazi Germany, and Manny was actually born in Milan, Italy in 1938. When Manny was just a year old, he and his family escaped to Shanghai, China, which provided refuge to more than 18,000 Jews fleeing Nazi persecution. Mr. Gabler will be interviewed and joined on stage by the museum's senior oral historian, Hannah Daly. Hannah has been here with the museum for over 10 years and has conducted hundreds of oral histories across the country. We were just talking about all the places Hannah's going next week, small towns in the Midwest and all across the country. Hannah interviews World War II veterans and many Holocaust survivors, of course, including Mr. Gabler. Hannah's work has significantly expanded the museum's oral history collection. You can see features of many of Hannah's conversations in the museum's exhibits, including the Liberation Pavilion, which shares the stories of persecution, liberation, and survival during the Holocaust with visitors daily. Please join me in welcoming Manny Gabler and Hannah Daly to the stage.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Can they hear me?
All right, so I understand that you were born in Milan, Italy. Could you give us some background on how your family came to be in Italy?
My parents were married in Germany in 1935, and it was an illegal thing to do because at that time, my mother, who later converted to Judaism, wasn't Jewish, and it was illegal for a Jew and a German to be married because they had the 1935 Nuremberg laws that forbid it. And so, and my father was a bantamweight boxing champion in Germany, and he was well known to the Gestapo. So they saw the handwriting on the wall, and I had an aunt in Milan, Italy, and she kind of was the connection for them to run to Italy. And so that's how we ended up there. And I was born there in 1938.
And, what fueled the decision to leave Italy?
Well, Hitler and Mussolini got together, and the Nazis came to Italy. They sequestered Mussolini in a villa with his mistress, and so the Nazis were again looking at how to solve the Jewish problem, and were looking for people to send to the concentration camps. And they wanted to catch everyone that they could. And so through HIAS, which was a Hebrew Immigration Assistance Society, they provided some money, and some Italian partisans took us to Genoa, where we got on a ship and left Italy.
And I know you were very young at the time.
No, I was a year old.
Do you remember your parents talking about how difficult it was to get everything lined up to leave Italy?
Later on, they talked about that, but basically Italian partisans smuggled them to Genoa.
And so how did Shanghai become an option over anywhere else?
The United States, Great Britain, closed their doors to any immigrants, so there was no place for Jews to go, and they needed a safe haven, and Shanghai happened to be one, and you could go there with no visa, no anything. You just got off a ship, and there was an area of Shanghai called the International Settlement, which was occupied by the British. And the Hongqiu area that we went to was right next door. And at that time, the British kind of made their own rules, and so there was no passport control or anything like that. So we just showed up, and that's how we ended up there.
Okay. And what was so special about Hongqiu?
It had been damaged greatly by the Japanese when they occupied Shanghai. And they didn't really care about passport control or anything, and they kind of left the British alone to do their area. And so Shanghai, at that time, the Hongqiu area was the poorest section of Shanghai, and it had been damaged during the war. So there were a couple of very, very wealthy Jewish merchants, the Kaduri family and the Sassoon family, and they put up the money and took old warehouses and turned them into bunkhouses. And there were 150 people per room in rows and rows of bunk beds, and the women and children who were on one floor and the men on another. And they sent flatbed trucks to the docks to pick us up and take us to the buildings that they had fixed up for us.
And so what are some of your earliest memories about living as a Jewish refugee in Hongqiu?
Mostly I remember that we lived in very, very crowded conditions. And remember, I was a kid, so to me it wasn't terrible. This just is the way it was. And so I remember living under these conditions, and we didn't have a lot to eat. And I remember walking to school, which the Kaduri family built a school for us, and it was called Kaduri School. And walking to school, I would walk past bundles of dead children and beggars on the sidewalk. And the children were wrapped in newspaper, and a garbage truck would come in the morning and pick them up. And it was just some of the kids that died in the night in the cold. But again, because I was a child, I just lived in that moment. It wasn't something horrible for me to see. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized this was terrible. So that's mostly what I remember.
I know when y'all were traveling, you arrived with clothing that your family had from living in Italy. How did that work out in Shanghai?
Say that again?
The clothing that you brought with you.
Oh, well, we had like one change of clothing, and we showed up in one suitcase and 10 Deutschmarks, if I remember at the time. And so we wore like clothing from hand-me-downs from other children, and I had one change of clothing. That was it.
Could you talk a little bit more about the school system that you went through?
Actually, we got a very, very good education. The school was part of the Cambridge college system. And by the time I got through what in this country would be the 6th grade, I'd had 2 years of algebra, 2 years of Latin, French, and my Oxford English reader, which was Chaucer and Byron and Shelley and Keats. And so we had a very, very good education. When I got to this country, I didn't touch a book till the 10th grade. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what about your accent?
Oh, when I got to this country, I had a British accent, and I took a lot of heat from the kids here, and I eventually got over it.
And what were the relationships like with the Chinese civilians when y'all were growing up?
The Chinese were a secular culture, so their kids, and this kind of proves that bigotry is learned. And the Chinese kids didn't know to hate us because we were white or Jewish or whatever. So they kind of accepted us, and we played with the Chinese children, and we were part of their group. And like I said, they never treated us badly because we were immigrants.
And so what changed? In 1943, things kind of changed for y'all, right?
Yeah, well, after Pearl Harbor, the Japanese threw the British out of the international settlement, and they threw the French out of what they called the French concessions, and put them into camps across the river from Shanghai. And so now everybody was the enemy, and they took a man named Kano Goya. He was a little Japanese man, and he was the one that controlled our getting in and out of the ghetto, which it didn't have any walls, but since we were Caucasians, where could we go and hide? So they kind of controlled how long people could stay out of the ghetto, because some people had jobs outside the ghetto, and this man would control how they could act and where to go.
Do you remember any specific interactions you had with this man?
Not myself, but he was pretty mean. He'd jump on some, and he hated people that were bigger than him. So he would jump on somebody's back and beat them or slap him in the face, and he was a pretty nasty guy.
Do you have anything that you want to share about living in this ghetto area?
Well, it was very crowded, and I would walk to the market for my mom, and there was no refrigeration, so when you bought fish, they would haul it out of a bucket that they had with fresh fish in it that were still alive, and they'd kill it, you'd take it home. Or a chicken, the same, it was a live chicken. And during the war, mostly what we ate was red beans every day. And every once in a while, we'd get some meat. But it wasn't until after the war that we were able to get decent food.
And so what happened on July 17th, 1945 that impacted your life?
The Americans sent down leaflets that we were going to be bombed, and they sent B-29s and bombed Shanghai, and the concussion of the bombs and that, and Shanghai, the water level was like 6 feet down, so there were no basements to hide in or bomb shelters to hide in. So we would sit in the hallways of what we called the Heime, which in German means homes, euphemistically. But anyway, we would just stick our head under a chair, hoping the next bomb wasn't for us. And the bombs fell all over Shanghai, and my father came and picked me up from school with my brother on his shoulders and walked us home through all of the devastation that was on the streets, and there were dead bodies everywhere. And the rickshaws, those two-wheeled rickshaws that were dragged by a person, and they became the ambulances. And they kind of pride themselves on the white cushions that they used to have in the rickshaws. And they were just covered in blood. And so it was a pretty nasty time.
And, what was it like for you when you saw your first American soldier?
Well, here was somebody that looked different than all the people I'd seen between the Japanese and the Chinese. And so here were these big white guys, and they were pretty nice people. And they were lonely, and some of them kind of took on a refugee family. And we had a Sergeant Larry, I don't remember his last name, but he used to bring us stuff from the pharmacy or the mess hall on the base that he was at. And he brought me an apple for my 7th birthday, and I had never seen one. So he was a really nice fella.
But what other ways did your life change once the war ended and the Americans were there?
Well, we now got a room of our own. It was like 12 by 15, and had a bed and a hot plate and a sink, and a little table, and a carved Chinese box that was at the foot of the bed, and it was a straw mattress that we all slept on, but it was a place that was our place. And there were 4 of these rooms in the building that we lived in, and a concrete toilet with a cold water shower. And then we had food to eat, because the market now had live food, and so it was a pretty good time.
And so what happened a few years later when Mao took power in 1948? Well, how did that impact y'all?
Well, we were refugees all over again. And my father had a letter from a garage in Perth, Australia, offering him a job, which I guess you needed to go to Australia. And then I don't know why, but he decided to go to the United States. And we hopped a American troop ship called the USS General Meigs, and we went on that via Hong Kong, Manila, Hawaii, and San Francisco.
And there was a little problem with your brother, wasn't there?
Oh, yes. My brother was since he was born in Shanghai, he was technically a stateless person. He belonged to no country. So it took us an extra year to leave Shanghai. Most of the people left in 47, and we couldn't leave till 48. And we missed Bao by like 1 month when he came to Shanghai. And so we hopped on this troop ship and went to the United States.
What was it like being on the troop ship for you?
Oh, it was really fun. I got friendly with the radio operator and the crew on the ship. They gave me extra food, and so it was kind of interesting. And along the way, we climbed the hills in Hong Kong up through the clouds. And in Manila, the whole harbor was filled with sunken ships that were still there in 1948 with all the masts that we had to sail through. And then we went past the Azores, and we ended up in Hawaii, and that was one of our stops. And then we landed in San Francisco.
What was so special about the stop in Hawaii?
The Jewish people there threw a party for us, kind of welcoming us to Hawaii, and somebody gave me a set of cowboy pistols, and I had never, it's the first thing I owned in my whole life, so it was a big deal.
All right, could you describe the feeling of coming to the United States?
Yeah, I'll never forget going under the Golden Gate Bridge. And we landed in San Francisco, and we were put up in a hotel for like a week before we left San Francisco and went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because I think my dad had a job there and that. But San Francisco was a real adventure for me because in the hotel in the morning I had cereal with cream, which I'd never had before. I had my first hamburger, and I walked Market Street in San Francisco, and there was a Market Palace, was like a store with like kiosks from different vendors, and had my first donut and fried chicken. And, it was like a food adventure for me to come to the United States.
Were there other culture shocks that stand out to you?
Yeah, there was a lot of traffic. The architecture, of course, was totally different. And that was about all I remember from San Francisco.
You mentioned in a previous interview the problem with eating chicken in the United States.
Oh, it took me about a year to like a piece of chicken, because the only chicken I ever got in China was the one that was live, that we had to kill and clean to eat, and it tasted totally different than the chicken here, because it was, packaged and frozen and whatever, but it didn't taste like chicken to me.
So I understand that many years later, you and your brother returned to Hongqiu in 1998. What made you want to do that?
Well, when we got there, we hired a guide because you don't drive yourself in Shanghai. And she said, tomorrow I'll take you to the People's Museum and to the waterfront. And we said, no, we've seen all of that. We want to see where we grew up. And I told her to drive into the Hongqiu area. And she was driving around, and I recognized the old Moishe Temple where I'd gone to Hebrew school. It still gets to me. But anyway, there was a fellow named Mr. Wong who ran this as a little museum, and it was filled with photographs of the Hongqiu area. And he said, where did you live? And I said, 818 Tongshan Road. And he said, well, I live there. I live there at number 12. And in China, there was like an entrance from the street and then little lanes off each of those. And those were the buildings where people lived. And so he took us to his place at number 12. And then he showed us the place where we lived. And I walked up to the door, and the nail holes from the mezuzah were still in the door frame and it hadn't been painted in 50 years. And it was like it was a profound moment because I realized who I was. So it was an incredible moment for me, very profound.
Did you?
Thank you. And I've told that story probably 50 times, and it still gets to me.
Well, thanks for sharing it again. So why is it so important for you to speak about your experience as a Holocaust survivor?
Well, if somebody denies the Holocaust, you can say you've met one and it's the truth. So I hope that the young people, I speak at a lot of high schools, and I hope the young people are the storytellers of the future. So that's why I do this.
What is it like for you every time that you speak about your experience and go through everything? How does that affect you?
Again, it always gets to me because I remember what we went through, and as a child, I don't have bad memories of it, but as an adult, I do. So, and you know, this thing that's been going on in Minneapolis, it's the second time in my life that I've lived in a city with an occupying force. And I'm hoping that people take memories from this and never let it happen again.
So my last question was, what do you hope the audience comes away with, besides what you just said? What else would you like them to come away with?
That basically everybody on Earth is a person, and nobody should be thought of as a different religion or culture, or, you know, I think if people grow up and understand each other and accept each other, it'll be a better world.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Manny, for joining us this evening and sharing your powerful and important story on this, critical day of remembrance. And thank you, Hannah, so much for your questions to help our audience learn more about Manny's story and the story of Jewish refugees in Shanghai. I want to thank all our audience, both here in person and then also our audience joining online. I know I got a couple emails from folks saying I couldn't make it in today, but would love to watch online. So no, we know you're there, and we're thrilled you're joining us as well. If you are interested in revisiting this conversation again, it will be available on the museum's YouTube page and also the museum's website. Please also join us again on Thursday, February 5th at 5 p.m. for another event we have coming up here at the museum called Museum After Hours. It will highlight our exhibit that's just right outside these doors here called Degenerate, Hitler's War on Modern Art. If you haven't explored that exhibit yet, it'll be a really fun evening to come. It'll be, actually the exhibit's open to, until May 10th, but this event will be a lot of fun with jazz music and art activities that are inspired by the exhibit. So we hope you join us for that as well. I would also like to thank again Toby Philanthropies for sponsoring tonight's program, which is a part of the Toby Family Holocaust Education Program. Thanks. Yes.
Want to ask questions? You want to ask if people have any?
And thank you all for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you at our next event here at the National World War II Museum. Everyone have a lovely evening and stay warm. Good night.
Sweet.